Piers Morgan, if you think my show platform's Jew haters, why do you keep coming back? Jonathan Conricus didn't expect that question. The former IDF spokesman was put on the spot live, and what followed was one of the most heated exchanges ever on Piers Morgan Uncensored. Watch what happened.
The ceasefire is supposedly back on for now, but the US strikes on Iran this weekend were a reminder of the long road ahead. Iran's control of the Hormuz Strait, along with Israel's occupation of southern Lebanon, leave the ceasefire in a state of permanent risk. Perhaps unsurprisingly, the only people who thought this was good news were the people who supported the war in the first place.
Part of a shift that is happening away from the interpretation of this not very good MOU in sort of J.D. Vance fashion and toward a much more Marco Rubio-like foreign policy. The idea is that we're not going to keep overlooking Iranian violence, particularly in the Strait of Hormuz. That's great. It's excellent. And the reason it's excellent is because you need the credible threat of use of force in order to get the Iranians to even abide by basic terms of agreements. And when you add what just happened in the Strait of Hormuz to the move that was made by Secretary of State Rubio at the behest of President Trump in this deal between Israel and Lebanon, you're starting to see the beginning of a good foreign policy emerge once again in the Middle East.
I don't actually think he knows what he's talking about anymore. All of my panelists tonight were supportive of the war on Iran. They've all appeared on this show at various stages of the conflict to tell me it's going very well and is certain to end in US victory. Time to check in on how that's going. Joining us from the Foundation for Defense of Democracies is the former IDF spokesman, Jonathan Conricus, host of the Josh Hammer Show, Josh Hammer, the former Trump security advisor, Fred Fleitz, and the combat veteran and host of Speak the Truth podcast, Matt Tardio. Welcome to all of you. Jonathan Conricus, we had a little exchange on X this week where we're always quite civilized with each other when you come on my show. You're probably one of my most returning guests, I think, in the history of Uncensored. So I was a little bit surprised by the tone you took with me, but you're perfectly entitled to, obviously. But you got into categorizing this show. You said you and your endless list of lying and unhinged guests have had a vital part in creating and cementing the modern-day blood libels against the Jewish state and its military. Here are some of the more obvious ones. You talk about civilian v combatants ratio, blame everything on Hamas. International starvation and Gaza is starving. You say this is all nonsense. Genocide and war crimes, none of that. Nothing to see here. Killing of journalists, no, they're all Hamas. You say I could go on and probably prove that every libel and lie against Israel made up by the United Nations, Al Jazeera, and so on, and countless others have gotten oversized amplification on your show by you and your list of rabid Jew haters. They keep getting invited on your show to spew their toxic lies. The numbers are plain and as simple as can be in modern war. The IDF has the best ratio on record in modern warfare. Even when you rely on Hamas's inflated numbers, Piers Morgan should stop peddling lies, propaganda and libel against the only democracy in the Middle East that is keeping jihadists at bay. So I guess my first obvious question is, why the fuck do you keep coming on my show? That's how you feel about it.
Well, it keeps me sharper, and I enjoy the exchanges. But on a serious note, as you know very well, people watch your show, and it matters. You yourself have commented, and I think with the relevant level of satisfaction which you have earned, that you are an influential, very influential voice in the US, probably the most influential podcaster, non-American podcaster, and a lot of people around the world listen to this for entertainment and information. And I see myself as someone who cares about my country, my military. I also care about truth. And I want to fight and I want to present an Israeli perspective, not necessarily the Israeli perspective. But I think that so far, what I found on this channel, and I'll return your words of courtesy, I found that I've been able to speak and I've been given the opportunity to present that perspective. But I have to say, Piers, that I stand by my words. And of course, I'm not happy if you don't like them and if it is offensive.
No, you're perfectly entitled. Let me be clear. You're perfectly entitled to your opinions. I just was under the mistaken belief that by constantly having you back on and many other pro-Israeli guests, that we were having balanced debates between competing positions, competing people. Many people, as you know, have a similarly egregious view of you and the stuff you come out with. And I've interjected a few times when I felt that's got too ad hominem. I was just surprised that you decided to lay into me for platforming people that you categorize everyone, it seems, who's criticized Israel as a Jew hater, right? Which I think is a grotesque mischaracterization of most of the people you're talking about. And I think that it also plays, to me, it plays into this extremely insidious aspect of the whole debate since October the 7th, which is any criticism of Israel or any criticism of the IDF or any criticism of Benjamin Netanyahu or his government, which contains some of the most disgusting headbangers in the history of governments anywhere in the world. I'm talking about Ben-Gvir, Smodrich and others who openly advocate for burning Lebanon to the ground, who endorse these appalling, aggressive expansions of the settlements on the West Bank, who talk about getting all the Palestinians out of Gaza and so on. You know what I'm talking about. You dismiss them as irrelevant. One of them is the national security minister of your country. So, yeah, I take exception, Jonathan, having always, I think, treated you fairly. I've interjected when I felt you've been treated in a particularly unpleasant ad hominem way. And to see you spray gunning your verdict on this show as presenting a platform for endless Jew haters to spread blood libels, and in the process, just disassociating yourself from any criticism that's come Israel's way in a perfectly legitimate manner for a lot of the awful things, frankly, that the Israeli government has been allowing to happen on its watch in the last 4 years, was incredibly disappointing. Because I'm like, if ultimately everyone that criticises you or the IDF or Netanyahu or Israel or the Israeli government is an automatic Jew hater, that to me is the worst thing of this whole debate from day one. There is no correlation for me between criticising something you say or Netanyahu says, or particularly Ben-Gvir and Smodrich, or criticising the IDF when I think they deserve it, that makes me a Jew hater. So I just was surprised. Why do that? Why be so, frankly, pathetic?
I don't think I am. And if you'll allow me, I want to reply to what you said. First things first. When I say, on this show, as you said, I've been on a few times, and on this show...
You've been on dozens of times, to be clear, on a show that you think just platforms Jew haters.
It's really getting tiresome, Piers. If you're not going to talk about Iran, I'm just going to log off. You made your point. Let's move on.
I don't give a monkey's what you want to do. If you want to log off, log off.
All right, later.
All right, well, log off. Fine. Carry on, Jonathan.
I'll try to be brief. And
anybody else wants to log off? I will come to other guests, but if anybody else wants to log off, I don't think it's surprising that I would want to have this out with Jonathan, given what he said on a public platform about me and the show. So I'm going to finish that conversation, then I'll come to the other guests.
Yeah, so being respectful of others and the time, I'll try to be concise. One, on this show, you have had a long list of people who I deem are hypocrites. Why do I think that they are hypocrites, and why do I think that their criticism of Israel is actually a facade, a front for good old-fashioned Jew hatred? Is because all of the topics that they allegedly care about, civilians in war, Christians being wounded or maltreated, journalists having a bad day at the office or even getting wounded or, God forbid, killed, and humanitarian aid, international law, media freedom, a long, long list, international war and the ratio of non-combatants versus combatants killed in urban warfare, terrorism, sexual violence. The list is very long, and so many of the people who have been repeat offenders on this show, Anna Kasparian, Cenk Uygur, Mehdi Hassan, and many others have gotten this powerful platform, and they haven't had to face questions like me. They've been given free rein to spew, frankly.
Absolute nonsense. That I've always challenged them from day one. In fact, as you know, for the first year after October the 7th, I was getting widely criticised in a vicious way by the other side, right? By the pro-Palestinian side, who felt it was outrageous that I was defending Israel's right to defend itself, or moral duty to defend itself after October the 7th, which I still
And I
believe
remember you
it had a
asking a lot
fundamental
of
right to
people-
do. Right, so
Yeah.
I've been attacked by both sides. The surprise with you, Jonathan, is that you have come on this platform more than any of them. And I've always been fair-minded to you. And yet you decided to disparage the show, to trash the show, trash me by association, and brand pretty much anyone that you don't agree with about this. And bear in mind
No, that isn't what I've
subtext,
said,
which is
Piers.
that
That
Israel
isn't what
has
I
been
have
getting.
said. I have been
Israel's been
very-
becoming increasingly a global pariah, and one of the reasons for that, which I find incredibly dispiriting, as somebody who has a lot of Jewish friends and who has always supported Israel, its right to exist, its right to defend itself, all of those things. The most dispiriting thing is that this constant refrain that any criticism immediately is actually about Jew hatred.
No, it isn't.
It is
It's
an
not
appalling.
immediately.
You talk
But
about
when it's
blood libels.
repeatedly
That
such-
right there is a blood libel.
Is when it is repeated, and I'm not going to be in a contest here. You've got the mic, you're in the studio. I'm not even going to try to compete with your mic. I just want to say this: when people are given continuous platforms to come with their tired, with Mehdi Hassan, he's basically repeating Hamas propaganda, doing it in English and adapting it to a Western audience. And you have Anna Kasparian, and you have Cenk, and you have all other matters of people who have come here.
And what about all
really-
the pro-Israeli guests I've had? Not just you, but Alan
Which is
Dershowitz
good.
and a string of others who've come
Yeah.
on to argue and debate with all those people you're talking about.
And when you say that I, cast aside the entire show and that anybody who criticizes Israel is illegitimate, definitely not.
Well, that's
And
pretty much what you said on your expos.
No, on your show, you have heard me say several times direct criticism of the IDF, of wrongdoings, of the Israeli government, of various ministers who I think have made horrible mistakes and distasteful comments and been part of very negative developments. And I have said that clearly, unequivocally. When Israel, by mistake, hit a humanitarian, the World Kitchen convoy, by mistake, misidentified them for Hamas terrorists, we struck them. I wasn't spokesperson then, but I said clearly, this shouldn't have happened. And I'm happy that an Israeli
Well, by your
officer
criteria,
was-
then you must
was
be.
reprimanded.
In that case, you must be a Jew hater spreading blood libels. Anyway, let's move on.
Before you go, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more content like this. This exchange highlights a bigger issue. Instead of addressing criticism of the Israeli government's actions, the conversation often shifts to questioning the critics' motives or labeling them anti-Semitic. In this debate, Jonathan Conricus didn't directly engage with many of the points being raised, which is what Piers Morgan challenged him on. Whether you agree or disagree, it's a reminder that difficult questions should be answered with facts, not personal accusations. Let me know your thoughts on this exchange in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.